Chesterfield have the chance to make it 7 games unbeaten and pick up a 6th win over the course of that stretch as well when they travel to take on Tranmere Rovers on Saturday afternoon, and having cut the gap with a victory over Carlisle in midweek to the playoffs down to just 4 points with a game in hand as well. Those hopes that were looking slightly faint and a little bit optimistic of making the playoffs now look pretty genuine as we enter the Spireites' final 7 games of the season. If they are going to maintain those hopes, though, you would imagine they're going to need some sort of a result here. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at how they might go about trying to secure what will be another big 3 points. But just before we do, of course, if you do want to catch me elsewhere, Twitter, TikTok, Medium, all those relevant links will be down in the description. Thank you very much for anybody that has supported any of the videos so far. Obviously, still kind of getting into the swing of doing these kind of longer form videos, these previews or post-match videos that we've been doing for these Chesterfield games over the past month or so. Still trying to get that off the ground, really. So as I say, any support and previous support is massively appreciated. That brief bit of admin out of the way, let's dive into looking ahead to, as I say, what is another big game on Saturday afternoon, and start where we always do, really, by taking a look at how Chesterfield might line up. Of course, we've got here their starting 11 and squad from that win over Carlisle United on Tuesday night. Not necessarily fully told by the scoreline, but a very dominant display from Chesterfield in that game. Definitely deserving of the 3 points, and probably should have won by more than the 2-1 margin that they ultimately did. So you would logically, that would lend itself to thinking, well, keep things kind of largely the same, and I think you would have to largely subscribe to that. I can't see radical changes in truth. However, there are just some kind of interesting little bits that have kind of come out of both Paul Cook and Danny Webb's pre-match press conferences, that for kind of any kind of neutral observers that stumble across this video, Paul Cook obviously Chesterfield's manager and Danny Webb assistant, kind of handle kind of different bits of like the regional media, etc. They've given their press conferences, doing this video on Friday just to wait for those press conferences to kind of come out and have the most complete picture, and it was definitely worth hanging on that little bit for this game. So a few interesting bits to discuss from those press conferences. We'll be diving into that very shortly. And yeah, like I said, there's some interesting stuff in there. The first bit I think that we'll dive into is the fact that Kyle McFadzean is going to be available for this game. Now that is a big boost for Chesterfield. Came in, joined the Spireites squad in January to kind of offer some cover and cover some issues that they'd had, injury-related issues. Che Dunkley, of course, was a big summer signing at that centre-back position, was lost and is still not returning. It doesn't look like he's going to return. Definitely not imminently, at least before the end of the campaign, which has been a massive shame. Other injury issues as well. So in January, Chesterfield did delve into the market, tried to pick up some loans and short-term players to try and bridge those gaps. Kyle McFadzean was one of them. Came in, played a couple of games, looked really good, as you would expect from a player that was such a pivotal player kind of in the Championship with Coventry City for a number of years. Then he got injured as well, and he has not been seen since. There was a fear that he'd been lost for the season as well. Thankfully, not the case from a Chesterfield perspective, and he's back available for selection on Saturday, from what both Paul Cook and Danny Webb have said. Now that is a big boost. They pretty much confirmed that he will be in the squad. So the only question really remains, in what capacity will he be in that squad? And I think you'd have to think that they've said that they've been pretty cautious with him in terms of his recovery. He's been kind of back out on the grass doing like full training for a couple of weeks or so now, so they haven't rushed him straight back in. So they've kind of tried to ease him in. Probably, as I say, because Chesterfield has suffered so many injury issues this season, they probably decided to be a little bit more cautious with these players. They've spoken about that with the likes of John Fleck as well, who we'll talk about actually a little bit later from kind of some other things that Paul Cook has said. But with McFadzean, they've said they've been pretty cautious with him, so you would imagine that if he is now in consideration, particularly being a centre-back, because that's not really a position that you kind of chop and change kind of in the game as much as maybe some of the more attacking positions. Of course, Paul Cook likes to rotate, particularly kind of his front four, but also his midfielders occasionally as well. But centre-back is one of those where you don't necessarily see a huge amount of in-game changes. So the point being made here is if he is in consideration for the squad, you would think he is probably likely to be capable of playing the 90. And if he is, I think he has to come in because he's, as I say, he's a player from his Coventry days and throughout his career. He's got such a wealth of experience. And as we saw with the kind of little sprinkling of quality that John Fleck brought to that game on Tuesday night, as Chesterfield continue to look to build momentum, chase down those playoffs, put a team together that if they get in those playoffs can genuinely compete for what would be an incredible promotion from where they were just a few weeks ago. You've got to be getting these key players, these quality players bedded in, get them a run of games, see if they can contribute. And really, with McFadzean only being bought in on a short-term deal, he is 38. What his plan is for next season, I don't think is absolutely known. I mean, he's not given any indication either way, really. But he's 38. You never know how long, particularly if injury issues do persist, which, touch wood from a Chesterfield perspective, hopefully they won't. How long he's going to continue playing for. But if he has got the intention of playing and potentially sticking around at Chesterfield for next season, you definitely want to take a look at him kind of before that. And with the quality that he has would be, as we've covered, a big boost. Which leaves the question, who's dropping out? And I think for me, it would probably, because of course, centre-back, it's either Ash Palmer or Jamie Grimes. I think it's got to be Grimes for me, just because if you're comparing Palmer and Grimes, I think Palmer is the one that has performed kind of slightly better out of the two. I think both have been solid for a large part and really stepped up when Chesterfield needed them because of these kind of defensive injuries that they've suffered throughout the season. Probably neither of them, you would say, were probably in immediate consideration to be kind of starting centre-backs at the start of the season, but have stepped up very well and kept Chesterfield competitive and given them something to play for down this back stretch of the season. So a massive contribution by both. Dropping Grimes is not necessarily a dig at him per se, but I think if you look at the performance over the past few weeks or so, I think Palmer has been a little bit more consistent. Of course, Grimes giving the ball away for Carlisle's goal that was a consolation, but almost wasn't when they had that headed chance to make it 2-2 from the corner right at the end. And there was also another moment in the first half where he tried a bit of an ambitious crossfield pass. It got intercepted, and Georgie Kelly, I think it was for Carlisle, really rushed his shot, and it really could have been a bit more of a dangerous situation for Chesterfield than it was, which would have made the game very, very different if Carlisle had managed to get an early lead and give themselves something to hold on to. So I think for me, Palmer just kind of shaves kind of staying in, and as a result, if you are going to bring McFadzean in from the start, which I would definitely consider doing if it is, as he sounds, fit and available, it would be Grimes to drop out for me. Of course, there is the other dynamic of Grimes is the left footer. Could that work in his favour? Possibly, but honestly, I don't think it's a massive consideration. Chesterfield, just through various things, have played with two right footers. They played with two left footers. I think there was an EFL trophy game where they ended up with 4 left footers across the back four for a brief period. So I don't think it's going to be an absolutely make or break in terms of the decision making, but it is a factor. So I just thought I'd flag it up. In terms of which way round McFadzean and Palmer will play, I would probably play it that way potentially, but it really could be either way. That's kind of an interesting bit to see how that dynamic would work out. But Wood, I think overall, I think I spent way longer on that segment than I planned to. But overall, I think I would go for McFadzean in for Grimes if Cal McFadzean is a player that you're looking to get into the 11, which leaves kind of the other bit, and kind of alluded to when I brought up John Fleck from Paul Cook's press conference that I thought was particularly interesting, and that was he was talking about in respect to John Fleck and Will Grigg as well. They're obviously two players that have had lengthy injury issues or kind of various injury issues and fitness issues and things like that in the case of John Fleck, but either way have spent lengthy periods off the pitch. And talking about not burning them out, of course, Chesterfield had a 3-game week this week with a Gillingham home game, and then a game after that, can't quite vanished who they're playing next Saturday, but another 3-game week. I was trying to continue that sentence to see if it would come back to me. It hasn't. So we'll just carry on. If I suddenly have a light bulb moment and I remember, I'll shout in this video. But I'm sure somebody can enlighten in the comments. But the point is made. 3-game weeks for Chesterfield back to back, and with these players just coming back, do you want to overload them and potentially risk them picking up another problem, particularly, as I say, we enter a big juncture of the season. Chesterfield could have some big games tagged on to the end of their season if they do happen to crash the playoffs. Both Paul Cook and Danny Webb said that decision hadn't been made. Whether it has and they're just being a little bit coy. I know Paul Cook, a lot of managers like to keep their cards relatively close to their chest. They don't want to give opposition any more of an advantage than there already is, kind of with the kind of vast array of kind of scouting tools there is these days. You don't want to make it so easy for teams to work out how you're going to play. So if you can keep some things under wraps, or maybe they genuinely haven't decided and it will be a last minute decision in terms of like the condition and fitness of those players. But either way, it's not kind of been stated definitively whether they will or won't start. So I suppose that the way to tackle this really is to look at both scenarios, really. I think if you can play them and you're confident that you can play them, then I absolutely would, just because it would be nice to kind of get those partnerships flowing. I know we spoke quite a bit in the kind of Carlisle recap about the very encouraging kind of partnership between Metcalf and Fleck, to say that they'd not played not much, if any, football together so far. To say that was kind of the first outing, proper outing for those two, very encouraging partnership. If you can kind of build on that and keep that rolling, I think that's something you'd like to do. And obviously getting Will Grigg up to speed as well would be a bonus. But again, a lot of games coming over the next few like days and weeks and things like that. So rotation not necessarily a bad idea either, to make sure that those players, as I say, don't kind of break down again and pick up another problem. So if it is decided that it may be better to kind of drop them onto the bench a little bit, who's likely to come in? We'll start with Fleck, and I think it was confirmed by Danny Webb in his press conference that Tom Naylor, who missed the game on Tuesday with kind of a little bit of a bug, something like that, has been cleared to play. He should be fine. And I think if Fleck is going to make way, that's probably the most likely option. I mean, you could possibly turn it into more of like a 4-3-3 and maybe play and move Dobra into a more central position, which he has done earlier in the season, then play either Ryan Colclough or Dylan Duffy out on this left wing. But that would be a very aggressive midfield of Metcalf, Banks and Dobra, a very attacking midfield. I think for the overall balance, I think Naylor is probably the more suitable option and probably the more likely option. So if you are going to drop John Fleck either to the bench or just rest him entirely for a game, I think Naylor would probably be the most likely candidate to come in there. And then for Will Grigg, there's a couple of options. Again, really, obviously, of course, Paddy Madden coming off the bench to score against Carlisle United. That obviously presents him as an option. For me, though, I think if you are going to, again, rotate Grigg, personally, I would put Vin Peppel in, just because I think he's that more kind of out-and-out leader of the line than Madden is. I think you saw in kind of the last couple of seasons that Paddy Madden had at Stockport County, where he was still a big player for them as they got promoted into League One last season. Scored a lot of goals off not a massive amount of minutes either, so was a massive contributor. But he would play that little bit deeper, either as kind of a second striker off somebody else, or as kind of an out-and-out number 10. So for me, he's not necessarily the profile at this stage of his career, at least, that would be most suitable to lead in the line. So that's why, although he came on and got himself a goal, I'm just going to actually move that back to a 4-2-3-1. Bear with. Thank you. Like I say, although Paddy Madden did come on and get that goal against Carlisle, I think it would be Peppel for me, if it is decided that Grigg is going to be rotated out, which I suppose we'll have to wait and see, but I think the joy is that you've got two very good players coming in that scenario. So either way, personally, I think if you're confident that these players can handle it, I would keep the team the same, just to build kind of the cohesion and the match fitness and all of those things, but also perfectly understand if you want to be that little bit more cautious, make sure that when you get down to these crunch games, last couple of games of the season where playoffs will probably, barring a collapse from Chesterfield, still be on the line, or even more so if you then get into those playoffs, making sure you've got all these players still fit and available. So I can understand both sides of the coin, and I suppose we'll just have to wait and see how things go there. That is largely it for this video. Not as much opposition analysis on this one, simply for a couple of reasons. Really, for one, Tranmere have only recently had a change of manager. There is now kind of 4 or 5 games of a bank since they changed Nigel Atkins for Andy Crosby. So there is a little bit of of a bank of work to look back through there, but unfortunately, just because of the kind of, as we've kind of alluded to here, kind of a thick and fast schedule for Chesterfield at the moment, haven't really found the time to go through and have a proper deep dive through those extended highlights and that kind of stuff. So not necessarily going to do too much opposition analysis. Of course, Chesterfield rather stormed to victory in the reverse fixture of this game. Obviously won 3-0, and there were some pretty kind of angry scenes in the away ends at at points in that game. But the mood a little bit different at Tranmere now. They've got themselves on a little bit of a run since the change of manager. Of course, did suffer a defeat at Harrogate in midweek, but before that had been on a pretty solid run. Looked like they pulled themselves kind of out of relegation trouble, but then all of a sudden Morecambe have popped up and won a couple of games. It's not necessarily as comfortable as it might have looked for Tranmere a few days and weeks ago. So very, very interesting. Another big game for both teams. And you would imagine that it will be even more hard fought, and a little bit of a closer game than that one against Carlisle on Tuesday. Kind of expected a closer, more hard fought game there with Carlisle scrapping for every point. But as we say, Tranmere have got a little bit more maybe belief about themselves and a bit more buy-in from the fan base. Of course, playing at home as well, so it should be a good atmosphere from that perspective. So I think we can expect a pretty decent game out of this one, and of course another big one for both teams, as all these games are. If you look at Chesterfield, they're either playing teams kind of down the bottom, scrapping for their lives, or teams that are going for promotion. Bradford, Wimbledon, possibly even Fleetwood as well, with an outside chance of the playoff places too. So it should be a great end to the season for the Spireites, starting with this game on Saturday afternoon. Of course, a slightly earlier kickoff time of 12:45 to kind of account for the Grand National. So yeah, should be a brilliant Saturday for a number of reasons, really, for sports enjoyers and enthusiasts, etc. Very much looking forward to this game. Very much looking forward to, as we say, covering what is looking like being a very exciting run-in for Chesterfield. Was slightly concerned when I kind of committed to this that it could peter out, but we are kind of in a position where it looks like it's going to be an exciting one. So, of course, results will be needed here to keep that excitement up, and we'll have to see what happens. But yes, we'll wrap this up now. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, as I say, I'm just looking down at my timer now. We have got up to around the same kind of video length with slightly less content. So hopefully it's not been too rambly, but of course any feedback, any support as well, like subscriptions, sharing elsewhere will be massively appreciated. And hopefully I will see you at the start of next week to have a look back at this Tranmere Rovers versus Chesterfield games. Thank you very much for joining. Of course, you made it this far. Thank you for making it, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.